Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Priceless Advice with and for Leaders of Volunteers. I'm your host, Dana Litwin, and I'm really delighted. This has been a long time coming, but I finally got Donte Curtis, the man himself, on the show. And I'm going to give you a little intro if you're not already familiar with Donte's work, but you should be because he's in all kinds of conferences and webinars all the time. Donte is the owner of Catch Your Dream Consulting, where he keynotes, consults with, and trains teams and organizations nationwide on leadership development, racial equality, inclusion, and supports them to create practical change. Donte currently is the co-chair of the board of directors at Social Enterprise Alliance Twin Cities. He's in St. Paul, and is a member of the program investment committee at Youth Prize. Donte brings his 17 years of facilitation and speaking experience with an expectation of getting you energized, you taking practical action, and finding hope for a better tomorrow. Probably one of the most energetic people you will ever meet, possibly aside from myself. Donte lives a life that is dedicated to leadership, social justice, and liberation. So glad to have you on the show, Donte. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dana. It's so good to be here.
Yeah. And so we want to jump right into it. Your work is especially pertinent these days in Minnesota, in Twin Cities itself. What have you specifically been doing in these first several months of 2026 that you're most proud of? And, what's been the most challenging for you?
So as you all know, right, we have been going through ICE insurgents. We had over 2,000 ICE agents descend onto the Twin Cities, and they are still here today at the time of this recording, about 900 of them. What I've personally been doing, I've been leaning on the works of Toni Morrison, who said, in times of despair, we speak, we do language, we write. And then she goes on to say, this is how civilizations heal. And to say that we're in a time of despair is an understatement. I mean, people have lost their lives, and I have been, me personally, I've seen my role as someone who is trying to give language to what's happening, writing, right, inspiring hope, having people sit with this dueling dichotomy of chaos and hope, chaos and joy, which has been a theme throughout the history of this country for marginalized groups, right? That we can't wait for moments of justice and liberation to feel joy. We have had to feel joy in times of chaos, in times of enslavement, in times of genocide. That's been my role, is really putting language and inspiring folks and really to folks who are doing the work. And then I've been, honestly, I've been supporting my wife. My wife is a social worker at a school. And so I've been taking care of the house. Right. I've been taking care of Malachi, who is my son. I've been, cleaning up, doing dishes, like, because she is really on the front lines as a social worker. We're running food delivery to people, right? She's collecting money at the school to support people paying rent. So that's kind of been my role, and what I've been proud of is kind of being in a supportive role. I tell people I'm not a protester. It's not my role. I take care of my son 2 days a week. I cannot get arrested. I cannot not be there for him. Luckily, there are plenty of ways that we can show up in this space. So those have been two things that I've been really proud of.
Absolutely. And that caretaker role and that holding community, especially supporting someone like your wife, Rachel, who's really on the front lines. And what I've been hearing, not just from colleagues in MAVA and other friends in the Twin Cities area, is that, of course, schools and teachers and, many churches are on the front lines,
Yeah.
really organizing things and doing it in a very spontaneous, informal, grassroots type of volunteering that I hope that nonprofit formal volunteering can learn from about building instant trust with your neighbors and like I got your back. And something that I think people seeing the situation in Minnesota and other American cities that are being caused by state violence at the federal level, I think people who aren't in activism or grassroots or volunteer engagement or nonprofit kind of frontline work all the time don't understand that there's a lot of different roles to support community. And it doesn't have to be, there's people who have incredible courage and take incredible risk going on the front lines, protesting, being legal observers, and, being medics. The news, I think, amplifies that frontline action for a really good reason. It's the most dangerous and extremely necessary. Yes, and I've also talked to people who are helping churches be places of sanctuary, helping schools organize, teachers assistants, PTA members, parents like yourself. That's what's the glue that's holding these communities together is there has to be different roles. And remotely from where I am, kind of the most I can do is amplify real voices from what's happening on the ground,
Mhm.
send money, send
Yeah.
support, share truthful information instead of AI or clickbait information that I know is vouched for from, again, like many friends and colleagues who are in that area. That's such an important role to play. There's also the just like you said, trying to do day-to-day work, also running a business, speaking, consulting with clients, in your case, facilitating, talking about DEI. Have you gotten any deeper insights or examples for your work from what's happening now? Like, are you able to, without putting anyone else in jeopardy, are you able to share examples when you're talking about community and DEI and diversity and inclusion from not just what's been happening in the last few months, but really, George Floyd and going back years and years? There's really this hot spot that the state and local police have really focused on. There's like, it's a small area. It's kind of one neighborhood where all of these intense things have been
Yeah.
happening, and deaths have been happening over the years. Have you seen a change since the organizing of George Floyd in some years ago to kind of what's happening today? Have you seen any like evolution of effectiveness or stronger bonds in community in the last several years?
Yeah, so something that I've been thinking a lot about now, right? If you go back to the murder of George Floyd back in 2020, right, in May,
Hmm.
there was a lot of outside support. There was a lot of corporations, corporate, a lot of people making statements, right? I remember getting calls, after, in June and July saying, "Hey, we've never thought about DEI before, but we just put money towards it like this month. We need help." I mean, so like all these corporations, millions and millions and millions and foundations, and it was pretty remarkable to see. I mean, we do know that the impact hasn't been as impactful as we would like to see. We also know that a lot of organizations actually didn't follow through on their commitments as well. That's a different story for a different day. What I am seeing is that we had the blueprint. When ICE came in, we knew exactly what to do. And I will say we have an artist here. Her name is Tish Jones. I want to uplift her because she posted, we need to make sure we're giving credit to Black and trans folks because during the uprising of George Floyd, like we modeled what's happening now with the insurgence of ICE, right? So there's a saying among African and African Americans that everything that we need is in the house.
Hmm.
And if community has not been the answer, it has been so beautiful witnessing, watching community step up in ways that how do we keep this going? We're talking people are raising money to keep people's house, to keep people housed. People are delivering groceries, on a daily basis, patrolling outside schools. One of our elders here, one of our good professors here in the Twin Cities, he works at the University of St. Thomas. He's a historian, and he says that history doesn't repeat itself; it echoes.
Hmm.
And we are feeling the echoes of the uprising of George Floyd because our community in the Twin Cities are stepping up. And I think that it like you said earlier around this notion of volunteerism, right? That like all of this is volunteer work.
Yes.
My wife is literally on meetings after her meetings after school at 7, 8 o'clock, right? All that's volunteer work. It cannot get done without the work of volunteers. And so it's beautiful to see and to know, people are like, I can't find volunteers. Really? What you mean you can't find them? Like, like our whole city's volunteering. So, so just that reframing around, like, yeah, we do this, and also I would say too, not only are we doing it, we're doing it in a what I'm looking at as a humane, justice oriented, liberated way. We're not just having people show up to people's houses unannounced. Like it's coordinated because ICE was following people around. It almost feels like the civil rights movement a little bit. Like people think the civil rights movement was just this scattered, unorganized thing. No, they were organized. The bus boycott was organized. You don't boycott something that long and it not be organized. We're there to organize rides. Same way we organize groceries, right? History doesn't repeat itself; it echoes, and we're seeing that right now. And so it's beautiful to see. And for me, there's a sense of possibility
Hmm.
that we can do this. When it comes to believing in something, but I think about it in two ways. One is belief comes first, and then you start moving. And then the other way is you start doing it, and then you start believing in yourself.
Right.
And I think that that's what happened here because ICE happened so quickly. We didn't have time to get our stuff together. We just had to start moving And now we're seeing, hey, this is possible. And I think for me, that belief, that hope is so important in this time right now. I've been talking a lot about hope lately and belief because I'm witnessing it every day, right? It was James Baldwin who says hope is invented every day.
And for anyone watching who isn't, read and watch James Baldwin interviews from back in the day, read Toni Morrison. When I was talking with Nyla Abair, we brought up Audre Lorde. So there's
Yes.
and speaking of Black and trans people being on the front lines of things, the Queen herself, Marsha Johnson,
Yes.
Stonewall, and, all the folks there, that's the groups that are specifically under attack by this administration and just this growing right wing fixation on trans people as like such a small and economically and politically not empowered group. It's like that's an easy scapegoat to pick on. And whenever history does echo through in every city or country, like I said, America has we have a lot of echoes and skeletons in the closet and grief and trauma to contend with that is literally not taught in some states of the United States and has not been taught for over 100 something years because there's certain companies that control textbooks that are out of Texas and they're just going to say, nope, we're going to talk about the lost cause and it wasn't all that bad and maybe we didn't genocide all of the indigenous people here. But there's a lot of people. I mean, our colleagues are very well informed because we're on the front lines of things. But I run into colleagues, especially in other businesses, that are who maybe grew up in a southern state or they didn't pursue a specific history or they just kind of like glommed a little bit in high school or middle school that get surprised what the facts really are and that
Yes.
this is the echoes of past sins, mistakes, belief systems that are maladaptive to human society that we're trying to change at that level. I've also had colleagues who are really interested in what's happening with this spontaneous grassroots thing. And I want to caution nonprofit professionals in formal systems that we're so used to. We have to calculate like who's doing what, the number of hours. And what I'm seeing with informal and kind of spontaneous grassroots stuff is yes, it's very well organized and very well coordinated, but for safety reasons, you're not necessarily keeping records because
Right.
one of the things that state violence is utilizing is not just AI in that analytical sense, but facial recognition. Like we've really shifted, and very unfortunately, in the last several years, a couple of decades, to a surveillance economy, to a
Yes.
data mining economy. And so, for-profit prisons, the detention centers, the concentration camps that ICE and DHS are attempting to build, 42 potential ICE warehouses or concentration camps have been stopped by local communities, but they're trying to do hundreds or thousands more. So I think gleaning this awareness of how effective informal volunteering and organizing can be, you don't have to enter it into volunteer management software. You don't
Yes.
have to, maybe it develops to a point where you can ask for grants or you're attached to, a mutual aid group that does have a formal nonprofit structure to get funded. But what I'm sending is like just verified Venmos and GoFundMe for people that I are friends of friends that I personally know. And to me, that feels like a more direct financial support that's happening in these days versus corporations in Minnesota like Target that were all for DEI and George Floyd stuff and then they like, oh, we're going to shift with the political winds, we're fair weather friends and we're going to eliminate that, and they're seeing boycotts of their stores, they're seeing real negative impacts on their stock and on their value and brand as a company. And so the power of grassroots and communities always is the first huge step to overcome something, not necessarily a bigger nonprofit coming in and telling people how to do things. So I really commend the work that you and your wife and your neighbors and everybody else that we know is doing there. And the drawdown of officers, that's the thing, is it seems like mainstream, even after a few months, mainstream media has moved on to the next big shiny
Oh, yeah.
story,
Yep. And
but it's still happening. And that's the message that I want to talk to you about. But you're working, you're doing webinars, you're doing things. How has this been impacting your recent work or informing your recent work? You just did a really successful webinar. Do you want to talk about that topic and kind of how maybe these
yeah.
events are feeding into that?
I'm super grateful that, a lot of my friends, right, a lot of my speaking colleagues, a lot of my people who are in the education DEI space are really struggling and have been for, since Trump took over and did all this stuff to you. Yeah, I am super grateful. That has not been my experience. That has not been my story. People still, right? There's still a need for learning, right? There's still a need for good quality training and education, and that will always be the case. I don't think that that will ever go away. As humans, we are designed to grow. We're just designed to want to learn stuff. Why did we go from riding horses to now we got drivable cars? Like we're so enamored with getting better.
So, what are some of the recommendations for books? We've mentioned some authors and some activists that are historically incredible resources to turn to. What are some current podcasts or books about hope and activism that either inspire you or that you recommend to the audience watching the Priceless Advice today?
I will give you one that I listen to regularly. Adrienne Murray Brown has a podcast. Check out their work. It is absolutely beautiful. I don't listen to it as much as I should, but when I do listen to it, it is always so grounding. But I would encourage you to on wherever you get your podcast from, search the name of people you want to hear from.
I'm happy to share space and promote other podcasts. I am of the mind that the more we can seamlessly share information with each other right now, true facts are getting harder and harder to
Yes.
find.
Yes.
Real human perspectives in real situations are being glommed over on social media with AI
Yes.
generated. Even if it's just
Yes.
a slight change, it can
Yes.
be subtle enough that you don't realize it's been manipulated. And that's on purpose so that it's the truth is harder to find and it's harder for people to agree on what's factual. That's a very deliberate tactic just with modern technology that groups like this didn't have maybe 100 years ago, but propaganda is going to propaganda through whatever channels it can. Hearing from real people where things are really happening, the real work is happening, is very important for me to share, not just on Priceless Advice for Leaders and Volunteers, which is, kind of a niche audience,
Yeah.
but getting people that awareness of just start reading here, start, listen to this on walking the dog or running errands or whatever, and just get some real information on how to work through these things. Donte, how do you want all of this to go? What is the perfect, hopeful, happy ending, not just for the Twin Cities or Minnesota, but what have you seen can be built on hope and what feels like the natural progression of building community and community trust and neighbors helping neighbors from here, even if it's in the short term or long term goals? What are you envisioning in your hopeful future?
I think for me, like I really deal with a lot of work around imagination. Bell Hooks talks about the power of imagination and why that's important. And I really do believe that we can have a world that is behaving in a way that is more liberatory, right? But behaving in a more just way. And that's why for me, I really lean on, I want people to day in and day out have better habits and better behaviors around their neighbors. And so whether we're talking about using pronouns
Hmm.
or or being okay with someone being, 2 to 3 to 5 minutes late to a meeting and not lashing out at them and saying you disrespected me.
Yeah, grace,
Um,
grace, and compassion
Yeah,
and
yeah.
respect. Yeah.
I want people to see people their lived experience just as much as you see their expertise. It has a direct correlation to whether or not people get jobs and whether or not people get promoted and whether or not people can save for college and become homeowners and and contribute back to society. It all starts with our habits. And so my hope is that people start taking habit change a little more seriously. My work, what I really, really, really do that is different than anyone else I've seen. I can comfortably say this now. I've seen quite a bit of people and quite a bit of thought leadership. I support people going from A to B. A being awareness and B being behavior in a social justice context. And that social justice context is important because all of the habit research that I have looked at, that I have researched, none of it I have not found. And I'm writing a book. I ain't found it yet. I'm writing a book about this. I have not found anyone that has connected behavior change to social justice in a real meaningful way. All the habit change stuff is about working out and about eating better and losing weight. And I'm like, what about using pronouns? What about resumes? What about how to be nice to volunteers? What about how to create a culture of well-being at your organization? How about taking naps and resting? Why don't the habit change research say anything about that?
Right.
And so, can I lean on the words of Toni Morrison one more time? Because she
Yeah.
said, if there's a book that you have not read and you want it, write it. So I'm writing the book because I'm like, we have to connect these two worlds because knowing is not enough. Awareness is just the beginning. You reading a book, listening to a podcast, watching this podcast, right? But we all know that knowing is just half of the situation. You have to do the thing. And doing the thing is not a product of your willpower. A lot of us want to do the thing. Like we wake up in the day and say, I want to go work out. I want to be more just. I want to get this. I want to do this. I want to do that. But we don't do it. There's science.
Hmm.
There is research back both theory and empirical data. There are tips and tricks and methods for you to use that can actually get you to do the things you say you want to do, even in your justice work, even in your liberation work. And that's what I'm committed to doing. That's another one would be to read, listen to the podcast, watch a YouTube video on how you can actually go from awareness to behavior.
Right. That because that's the big change is
That's the
yeah,
change.
that's the
Like
big
like
that's the change
that's
that matters. Yeah.
that's the change that matters, right? You knowing about pronouns and you knowing about bias and that people. If if one more person tells me, well, that's I already been to a bias training. Okay,
Does that cover all of it for the end of
yeah,
time? Yeah.
yeah,
That's just the
yeah.
start,
Like
man.
like like you have biases every day. Going to a training is great, but again, that's such an awareness mind frame. I'd be like you said, I went to the gym yesterday, and now it's 3 months later. It's like, okay,
Okay. Yeah.
have you been to the gym today? That's
Hmm.
like you saying, you know what? I brushed my teeth on Monday.
It is Wednesday, my friend.
It is
Yeah.
Wednesday. It's Tuesday. Okay, like the dentist don't care if you brushed your teeth yesterday. As a matter of fact, your teeth don't care if you didn't brush your teeth. Yeah, you could have brushed your teeth yesterday 2 times a day, and
Yeah.
now it's Tuesday. What are you doing today? It's a habit.
Building a habit. And
It's yeah.
yeah, and I agree. And there's different for whether someone's neurotypical or neurodiverse, there's different
Yeah.
tools, techniques, methods like you talk about. There's a ton of those. I'm so
Yes.
glad you're writing the book about it that has that social justice and that kindness and that empathy frame because so much of the change your habit clickbait on YouTube, clickbait on social media, a quick little book that somebody with a ghostwriter cranked out and slapped their name on it.
It's so
Uh,
real.
there's so much grift and gimmick and flash that this is why I like things grounded with real people with their lived experiences and learning from each other, learning from the wisdom in the room. To your earlier point, Dante, that I have the philosophy of every day is a chance to learn something new
Yes.
from each other, about yourself, about the world. Stay curious. Again, we've mentioned over and over again, hope is an action word, but so is curiosity. If someone's with chronic illness or chronic pain, or I have a ton of friends with long COVID from the last few years, you might have different energy levels. There can be, brain fog and various conditions. Yes, and we know from studies that our attention spans are getting shrunk by the current rage engagement, click, click, 6 second videos of the last several years. And the solution to that is about 2 weeks of reading a book. If you read a book, you can change your brain for the better and get back some of your attention span, get back some of your concentrations, and ideally not on a screen, but you can still just engaging that language learning part of your brain does lead to pretty much universal positive results. Every study that's
Yeah.
been done about kids and short attention spans. And so I think we have to recenter on our beautiful, mushy, busy human brains
Yeah.
and how they can be real different from each other. We can have really different ideas from each other, but when we have a common goal of neighbors helping neighbors, it really has been hopeful to me and heartening and inspiring that there are so many real examples of neighbors helping neighbors that the news isn't covering. And maybe that's for the best because, again, like you said, safety, kind of operational safety at a certain point. But I think that is what we as leaders of volunteers or anyone interested in inclusion equity work, the kind of work that you do, DEI work, even when the work is under direct attack, like nonprofit kind of work is right now, there is still success stories. There's positive. There's a hunger for this. And it's really a very small percentage of people in the world that are doing the things they're doing at their levers and levels of power just for themselves. And because of the way that clickbait and news coverage is, you can forget that the vast majority of people in a particular country and the world don't want it that way.
Yes.
And when we connect with each other and can see a different future that, is better for the vast majority of people instead of a tiny, 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 tiny percentage, that's, I think, where we can really dig our heels in, hold hands, metaphorically and realistically in some senses, and go forward with this kind of work. And volunteers are at the core of it, whether it's hours are being put in a database or not, whether it's being put in an annual report or not. But there's so many millions of hours at this point, because I know millions of people are doing this. There's millions of volunteer hours that are having more impact in this grassroots informal setting that may not ever be recorded, may not ever be listed in a grant, application, that are having as much or more, way more direct positive impact on communities and community protection than anything that a giant national or global nonprofit or foundation is doing. And there's Vu Lee used his platform to shame giant corporations and giant nonprofits that are not stepping in to help in the Twin Cities or Minnesota, that maybe did in 2020 with George Floyd and COVID and other factors. They're like, I don't want the federal government to be mad at me. It's like, no, no, no. That now is not the time to comply in advance. Now is
Right.
the time to push
Right.
forward. Now is not the time to cower. Now is the time to, if you have any platform, any privilege, any loudspeaker, this is the time to magnify and accelerate community connection, and just recognizing that neighbors helping neighbors, and more people are worse off now in 2026 than they were even a few years ago, and we're much worse off than we were 10 or 25 years ago. And we have the power to change that course of action. The present is how you change the future,
Yeah. Yes.
and
Yes.
people don't
You,
forget that. Yeah, they don't
yeah.
remember that.
You reminded me of one of my favorite quotes by
Mm,
the amazing great John Lewis.
mm.
In his letter that was published after his death that he wrote, there's a line in there that I lean on. He says, "It will be ordinary people with extraordinary vision that will redeem the soul of this nation." And we are literally like putting Minneapolis, St. Paul pictures right next to that quote, because we are literally doing that right now. Ordinary people, right? People giving $5, $10, right? Going to help your neighbors. Ordinary people with extraordinary vision that this can be better, that we do not need corporations to support us, that community is all we got and all we need. We're watching John Lewis's words come to life right here in our community, and it is beautiful to watch.
It's beautiful to watch. It's wonderful to have this conversation with you, Donte, today. And so I'm really glad that you're here sharing your experiences from the Twin Cities, that we can have this conversation about not just, general state of the world, but how it is impacting volunteers, communities, how nonprofits and foundations are behaving or misbehaving at this time in history. And I'm really, really grateful. What have
Yeah,
you got going on that we can watch out for? And your website. I'll point people towards your
yeah, for
website
sure.
too.
Yeah, so two things that I'm so excited to share with folks. One is I am unveiling and creating, it's called the CYD subscription circle. And it is a low cost, affordable, high quality training and consulting subscription. You think about subscription, right? The point of it is to make it affordable for folks, right? We're doing that at Get Your Dream Consulting. And so there's going to be a link down there. You can go check it out. We're doing 6 trainings a year, plus 5 consulting hours per organization. And it's for organizations um, that really care about investing in their leadership, invest in their organization leadership. Yeah, we're seeing this need in our community because of all the federal funding cuts and all the stuff. People still deserve access to quality learning, and we know that learning and you supporting your team's growth is one of the reasons why they stay. Because if you are not growing, you are dying. That's just like a law in like plants. Like either plants are growing or they're dying. There's no other way. And then the second thing is the book will be out this year.
Oh,
Uh,
okay, good.
yeah. The book will be out this year. It's
Okay, good.
actually it will be out by September.
Thank you so much, Donte, for your sharing your priceless advice, your
Thank you so much.
Tuesday tips. If people have any follow-up questions, I'll put your LinkedIn information, your website to get in touch with you. And
Thank you so much, y'all. It's been a joy. Thank y'all for listening.